welcome to another edition of the MatthewJ Show. So glad you could join us here on a bit of a chilly evening here in Philadelphia. I got just a little too used to the 80s last week. I know it was short-lived, but man, it was nice out there. When we're back, it was like 29 degrees when I went out for my walk today. Big change. Tonight, you join us on a great night. We have Michael Vass live from New York City. He's going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about everything. But we're going to be starting off with New York. Michael, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. It's currently about 34 degrees. I missed it was 80. It was 80. It was great. Where'd that weather go? But, it's 34, which isn't that bad for this time of year in New York. But having a decent time. I wish I had a different mayor. I'd like to see a different governor. The world is changing, and I think it's getting into a very positive direction. So there is hope for the future. We'll see.
Okay, well, you know what, Michael? We're going to start off with your pals there in Albany. And I was reading this last night, and believe me, I was thinking of you, and I said, you know what? That's the first thing I want to ask Michael about. I think you probably should know, but you're going to know about this, I would think. Bill introduced an Albany that would force all residents to turn off their outdoor lights at 11 p.m. or face fines of $250 to $500 each time. Aren't there like more serious problems in New York, Michael, than the light situation?
I was looking into, it's actually called Assembly Bill A4615. I had to double check the number just then. But it's Assembly Bill A4615 in case people want to see it for themselves. And I looked at that, and I was trying to figure out, how am I going to bring this up in the show today? It's such an example of inefficient, ineffective micromanagement of Democrats and progressives, that their biggest problem at this point in the world is that they're trying to figure out there's too much light pollution. And so they want to micromanage people's private homes and say, you've got to turn off your lights. In case people don't know what the bill is, it's you have to, by law, you have to turn off your porch light and your outside light. So for your garage as well, about 11 p.m., you have to turn it off. Otherwise, you will get a penalty. And this is ultimately micromanaging. So if you work third shift, screw you. If you're a woman and you happen to have gone out, or you had to go to the store, you went to a club with your friends, you were out for dinner, whatever the reason is that you, or young teens, you were out and you're coming in for whatever reason at 11 o'clock or later, you're going to be in pitch black darkness because some progressive white liberal, always in New York State, said, I want to see that faint star millions of light years away. And because I want to see that from my downtown Manhattan apartment, you in upstate New York, in the middle of the woods, you have to suffer. So if there's a bear, if there's an intruder, you will suffer the consequences because they want to see that faint star from their porch in a Manhattan high rise. This is insane. This is micromanagement. It is abusive, and it doesn't help. It's going to save me money. Oh, you're going to save money. What? You'll save $20 in a year? Let's be realistic. The porch light is not the thing that's draining that's not breaking the bank on energy, and it's not the problem. That's not it. Whether you have a porch light on or not, or a garage light on. This is stupid. Besides the fact that the government has no right to tell you how to live in your home. This is your home we're talking about. They have no right to do that to you. If you want to fix energy, you know what? New York should have more nuclear power plants. If you're into green energy, it's the cleanest, most stable form of energy you can get. But they're like, no, we can't do that because all of our donors, all of the kickbacks are coming from green energy. We need more windmills that kill all of the animals, but all the birds. But they're supposed to be eco-friendly, so kill the birds. That's wind. Oh, how about solar, which doesn't work? 80 years. It's still not effective or efficient, and it's taking up a bunch of farmland that could be making food for people that we could distribute to those who are hungry in New York State, across the country. No, no, no. We're going to pave that over and we're going to put solar plants on it, which are inefficient, ineffective, and according to the Department of Energy of New York itself, will not make enough energy to allow people to have the same quality of life in 2030 as we have today.
Michael, let me ask you these questions, and I know they're basic questions, and it probably sounds stupid to you. Obviously, this would be a civil, not a criminal penalty, and you don't think it's a shot at making a revenue generating thing. I mean, you could see people, you could see ads in papers like, did your neighbor leave the light on last night? Like, what if you're elderly or stuff like that? Or like the example you gave, the woman coming home late, or you forgot, or whatever reason, you're disabled and you couldn't get out there to, maybe the light was outside or whatever. I mean, this is really, really crazy. The bottom line here, Michael, what are the chances of this progressing?
It's New York State, so it'll probably pass because remember, New York State is a single party state. Every problem in New York since 1958 is a problem created by Democrats that has been allowed to exist by Democrats, kicked down the road by Democrats. Democrats control the assembly, they control our state senate, and 90% of the time, they control the governor as well. So when you have that combination, they don't need to listen to their rank and file Democrats because they're counting on people voting straight down the line. They don't listen to Republicans because they have no power. And third parties, well, they stomp on them on a regular basis. So they don't care. They think that often it's said that Kathy Hochul is an empress, that Andrew Cuomo was an emperor. They act like that because there is no accountability. This is Gestapo style tactics. I don't say that lightly.
No, I know it's unbelievable, really. That's why I brought it up to you.
You're trying to turn the police and your neighbors into informers about you having your night light on because you work third shift or you're a single woman and you like to go out and enjoy yourself, have a late dinner. Your teens are out with their friends and they come in and they got a curfew, but teenagers, come on. Yeah, they're going to come in at 11, 12. It happens. And they're in the middle of darkness.
Michael, would you, is this considered like nanny state stuff?
Absolutely. How would you define it otherwise? The government is literally controlling your light switch. They're telling you when to turn it on, when to turn it off. I was 5, and my mom stopped telling me to turn on and off the lights when I was like 5. And now you've got grown adults that have to answer. And they're like, well, no, but you'll save $20 this year if you turn off the light. How about you do something to actually fix the energy grid, which is expensive given, but let's do that. Or how about we build a nuclear power plant or 2, because that will actually make a real difference. They refuse. No, we got to be green. Can't use fracking. Can't use natural gas. We'll just use electric. Where does electricity come from? It's just not naturally occurring.
Right.
In other words, we have to use gas or coal or nuclear to create the power so that we have the electricity to have an electric stove, which is another infringement on my privacy, my freedom to choose. And they don't care because they control. And that's the problem with single. And it doesn't matter.
Michael, how about the fines, though? $250 to $500? That's not like a $50 fine, man. That's like a lot of people might not be able to even pay that fine.
No, I don't care what the fine is. It could have been $5. The government doesn't have the right to tell me anything on my personal life. They might as well tell you, well, you're going to wear blue jeans, but I like to wear a suit or a skirt. You don't get that choice. They're literally going to next tell you that, oh, by the way, you have to, I don't know, your refrigerator can't be full all the time, or it has to be full all the time. I mean, they're literally going to be like, did you wash your dishes? We're going to come in and check.
Yeah.
There's a similar thing going on in Minnesota. It's Bill HF 3433. You may not have heard about it. It's part of a gun ban, but it includes a stipulation in there. If you go to section 2, subsection B of that bill, it literally says that the government will have the right to come into your home at any time to check that you have safely stored your firearms, that they have the right without a warrant to walk into your house at any time of day or night, any day of the week, 24/7, 365 days a year, to walk into your house and just walk around and see, are your firearms safely secured? Where are they? How many are there? By the way, while they're walking around your house, if they see anything that would be a violation of any regulation ever created in the state of Minnesota or in the government in the United States, they can then, since they're already there, they can arrest you for that.
Michael, I didn't hear, I know. I'm glad you're getting this out to the audience. I hadn't heard about that. You know what it sounds like? Not the exact same thing, but Spamberger, which he's doing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's pathetic what's going on there. And is there any pushback? You say to yourself, Michael, the voters, did they vote for this? I mean, she's off and running with her agenda.
No one's voted for this. It's like Mandami, to bring it back to New York. Again, we're talking about nanny state. We're talking about the way that we're seeing Democrats and progressives micromanage our lives. None of this is what we were promised. None of this is what we were told. But there's been a lot of people like you, like me, and others who've said, hey, wait a minute, but the scope of what they're saying infringes on rights. We should be concerned. We should ask them direct questions about that. We shouldn't just trust them because they're saying, trust me, bro, essentially. And we're like, no, I don't trust you. And now we see the truth of their positions. Spamberger's completely reversed her positions now that she got in. Mandami, you remember one of the times we were speaking back in 2025, I was raising money, and you helped me with that. Thank you for letting your audience know about it. And I was raising money for the Jericho Project to
I remember that,
homeless and homeless veterans and families in New York, because I didn't trust Mandami. I literally said, I don't trust him to help the homeless. In January alone, 19 people died because of the policies of Mandami. I was right, sadly. And that's a record, by the way. Mayors do not have 19 homeless die due to weather in an entire year. Mandami, and that's blue or red, doesn't matter.
Michael, his justification, he didn't want to take it down anymore in homeless encampments. What was his logic for that?
Leave them where they are. That was his answer. That was the reasoning. Reasoning is, well, they're already outside. They have their lifestyle. Leave them be, and we'll be able to help them better that way. We'll send social workers under the bridges and into the park where the homeless are to talk with them, and that'll help them better than actually taking them and bringing them into a warm building, letting them stay there for a couple of hours, give them some food, and let them warm up before you're not holding them against their will, but let them warm up for a couple of hours.
Michael, who pushed back on him? Who pushed back on him where he had to do an about face on it?
He really didn't. It was definitely public pressure, because people in New York, those who've been here, normal, regular New Yorkers, people who are actually born here, which is about a third the population, were saying, this has never happened. This has never happened under any, even Bloomberg and what was the other one? The German, even the most progressive of our mayors, they didn't do this. This is unprecedented, and he's continuing to screw up even more. We know that his staff, they hate black people, they hate white people, they hate everyone who's American. Listen to what they've said about their policies. Oh yeah, we're going to punish the middle class, knowing this is going to disproportionately affect the poor and the black middle class in New York City. And they're like, no, we're just going to raise taxes 9.5%, property taxes specifically, to raise this up. And that means that property is going to go up, rent for businesses is going to go up, the products that those businesses sell, that's going to increase all across the board, disproportionately hurting poor and lower incomes and black middle class families. And they said, we know it's going to hurt you, but we're going to do it. He literally said, but I'm going to do it.
No, I know it's a mess. And Michael, listen, let me just tell you, while he's drawing the wrath of MatthewJ show. Why? Because as you know, I'm Irish. Yesterday was a big day for me. Mm-hmm. And your boy got up to the podium made maybe one reference to it and then turned the whole speech, which was supposed to be St. Patrick's Day, into a Middle East speech on Gaza. That's how he rolls, and I agree with you. You know, if you're not Muslim or connected with what he wants to do, he pushes it all aside. And we didn't even get to the part during Ramadan where I was seeing photos in what's it called, Gracie Mansion, where he has the prayer carpets out and everything rolled down. Is he that inclusive to others, Christians, Jews?
Well, you notice he did this really quick. He's had enough time. He could have had a bishop, the Archbishop of New York, could have had him over.
Yeah.
For tea. He could have had any of the rabbis in New York, could have had them over.
That's
for
true.
Breakfast or lunch or something, just to be open, to show that he actually respects all different religions. Could have had over Hindus or maybe any of the Dalai Lama.
Buddhist.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, any of those. He could have had one of all of them come over and just said, no, I'm open to them all. No, he has only given a privilege, extended and welcoming hand only to the Muslim community. He's now in Midtown Manhattan. There is a call to prayer, which is a religious necessity for Muslims.
Yes.
Which is fine, except this is blaring 5 times a day, starting at about 5 a.m. By the way, New York is not a Muslim-dominated community. It's just not. That's not our culture. That's not our population. But yet he's imposing this onto people who have nothing to do with that. And many people are atheists. They don't want to have this imposition and to wake up to the call to prayer that they don't believe in and that they don't share those beliefs. This is literally an ism, an ist. This is I don't even think we have a term for it besides, I guess, bigotry is basically the term, to preference one religion, one ideology over all others. And we are seeing this. Mandami is a bigot.
Michael, do you see the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal in their editorials? Did they address this issue at all?
Slightly, like when it came to the homeless dying, there were a lot of editorials coming out about that and saying you're ridiculous and this is harmful. Your policies are directly harming people. We saw a couple, usually like the New York Post, a little bit more right-leaning of the news media, where they came out and they were talking about what he was doing in terms of some of his other policies here and called them out a little bit. But you got to remember, every major news media organization, we're talking CBS, NBC, ABC, MS Now, or whatever the hell they call themselves, they all have headquarters in New York. Mm-hmm. They have thousands of employees. Out of their 10,000 each and every one of these businesses have 10,000 employees. They have thousands of their employees that are in New York City running around the 5 different boroughs. And none of them are trying to talk about this. They only talk about this on the local New York news channels, not the national. They are backing him up. They are giving him cover. They are excusing this. And I know we're going to get to it at some point, but that includes when 2 teens threw a fragmentation grenade that was covered initially only by local news. The nation didn't get to hear about it until everyone found out what locals were saying about it, and then it became national news. Again, ABC, NBC, CBS, you name the big mainstream news media, they all have offices, major offices in New York City.
That's a good point, Michael. Michael, how about CNN portraying those two as, they just took their ride up from Pennsylvania, a quiet little town, and they're just walking around New York City, happened to come up on the mayor's mansion, and wow, all of a sudden an IED came out. It was like portraying like this isn't a big deal. It's not. It could have been potentially catastrophic, but it's not a big deal.
And by the way, I'm not going to call it an IED because that's too amorphous. People don't know what you can't visual unless you've been in the military. You don't really visualize what an IED is, and that's why they use that because and they don't say improvised explosive device. because then you'd have an image in your mind of what it is and what kind of danger it presents. No, they say IED because it's neutral, it's safe. It takes it out of your mind. It was a fragmentation grenade. Right. It was a bomb meant to spread around shrapnel, metal shrapnel, to maim and to kill. So that's the first thing I have to say about that. But the thing is, remember when we were younger? Don't you remember going out on Saturday night or after school back in high school days, and you'd walk around with your Molotov cocktail, and you'd just casually walk through the city, try and find some kind of event happening so you could just firebomb your local community. We all did that as teenagers, right? Oh, no, we didn't, because that's abnormal. There's nothing normal about it. And CNN, they're like, oh, this violated our ethics and we're sorry we removed it. No. It passed your ethics challenge because everything that is published by CNN and most of the mainstream news media goes through multiple people. So you had someone who wrote it. You had someone who edited it to make sure it was structurally a correct sentence. You had someone else who copy wrote it to make sure that it was properly formatted, and then it was published by yet another person. You have at least 4 or 5 different levels of your news media organization proofreading and approving of this every single step. And it was only until they got the backlash that they said, oh my God, wait a minute,
Michael,
this. Yeah, although they didn't stop Abby Phil from lying to the American people.
Go ahead. Final point up to was on tonight. Now, these individuals reportedly had visited prior to that, and apparently were rubbing elbows with ISIS or some other terrorist groups. Now, I'd have to ask you, Michael, and I know it's not a perfect world as far as intelligence is concerned. How did that not come up on people's radars, even when they came through customs or, we have sources all around the world, how these individuals, they go there, they get possibly some training or whatever, and they come back and U.S. intelligence doesn't know jack about it. It just seems odd to me. That's all.
According to what I saw, which was on local CBS news channels, some of their reporting. So you had to dig for this. It was about one paragraph that stated that the 2 teens, one went to Turkey, one went to Syria. That was in 2024. In 2025, they both spent somewhere around 6 months or more in those countries, potentially getting in contact with ISIS in person at that point and or being trained by ISIS at that point. We don't know for sure. And I have not seen any other news agency follow up on this news or report this news. So it's in one article, one paragraph at the bottom of a very long article. Most people will never see it. That's why you didn't hear about it, because it's not being covered. So should America be aware? They have been concerned? A couple of teens at that time, 17 and 16, were on their own in these foreign countries with heavy influence of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, terrorist organizations, and then they came back. Should that have been, if not a flag, just a checkbox that says, yeah, we should have this on our minds? It should be something the government at least occasionally looks at.
Michael, what's the possibility that they were on the internet communicating with individuals before they went to Turkey? How about that?
Guaranteed it happened. And mind you, I believe in privacy. I do. But there are certain websites we know are draws. They're meant to try and bring in converts to not just Islam, but also terrorism. We know that they exist. We know what those websites are. That's what the job of the FBI and CIA are. They should be monitoring that. And when individuals who are on there are taking flights around the world, because these are open forums, so it's not like we're breaking privacy.
Right.
They're open to the public. They want people to come in. Great. So we can monitor that. And if people are going over for extended periods of time in these foreign countries, I think, yes, it is fair to put a checkbox on them and say, you know what, follow up on these people somewhere, when they come back to America, let's do a follow up and just double check. Did they suddenly become converted to the terrorist ideology? Is there social media now suddenly espousing this extremist terrorist ideology?
Michael, let me ask you a question. A bigger societal problem, I guess I would say, here in America. Twofold question. A, where were the parents? B, Michael, how do two young teenagers, I know they were 18 and 19, I think, when they commit these acts, how do they get radicalized? And then we can say internet. We can say, okay, maybe they went to Turkey, but let's face it, a lot of that, and I don't know, who knows, Michael, there could be ISIS cells here, right, Pennsylvania, New York, whatever, right, that they were in communication with. How do you get radicalized? And I'm very familiar with these two areas. The one kid's from Langhorne, which is about 5 minutes away from here. The next is from Newtown, which is about 15 minutes. I'm very familiar with both towns, Newtown being the one with the $2 million house. It just amazes me that our country, you know, if you want to come here and do what's best for yourself, for the whatever, make the American dream, that's great. But what possessed them? They had everything in life, Michael. One would assume these pretty wealthy people. I know that's a nice high school there they were going to as well, an affluent community. What makes them say, you know what, I really hate America? And essentially, this act was that. Michael, when that kid comes out, he's dumb enough. At his, he waved some kind of an ISIS hand gesture. Does he realize he's cementing himself? There are terrorism laws in our country, which you and I know they could be doing a long time. They're just starting their life out, and now they're going to spend a couple decades in prison because I'm pretty sure Bondi's going to come down hard on this.
Well, they should, because think about the threat they posed. They were actively seeking to kill police. Their primary targets were police officers and Americans who were protesting with their voice, who were just speaking. You don't have to like what Jake Lang was saying. You don't have to agree with him. That's not the purpose of a protest or freedom of speech. He gets to say what he wants. There were a bunch of leftists there that were protesting against Jake Lang. Again, peacefully with their voices. Perfectly fine. That's the system in action. Police making sure no one was hurt. They were actively trying to target the police and the right-wingers. And because it is a fragmentation grenade, they also were perfectly fine killing the left if they could, because they don't agree with the left either. By the way, if you're on the left and you're like, oh, no, you just don't understand. Look at what Iranian terrorists do to LGBTQ individuals. Hell, they'll stone women to death for being sexually assaulted. So, they're not in favor of anyone that was there. So these kids should go away for a long time.
I agree.
And why did this happen? Those kids grew up. Now, their families came here in the early 2000s. They didn't come when we rescued a lot of people from Afghanistan. They didn't come during that turmoil of the Biden administration. They came. Right. This was under G.W. Bush. And we had refugees, and we've always taken in refugees. And their family assimilated, apparently, did very well for themselves. They're millionaires. I have no problem with that. But these kids grew up for over a decade with the left indoctrinating them at high school and at college, every day on social media, in the news, and in entertainment, telling them to hate America, to tell them that America was evil and bad. NBA players kneeling every day. You've got the Hollywood system that's telling them that America is a horrible country and men are bad inherently by birth. You've got college and high schools telling you CRT, critical race theory, that by the color of your skin, if you happen to be white, well, you're just a villain. If you're any other skin tone, well, then you happen to be a victim, and that's lifelong. And they're looking at that going, oh my God, that's disparaging. That is depressing. And when people are disparaged, when they're depressed, when they are overwhelmed, people normally reach out to religion. And what do terrorists, the majority of terrorists in the world right now, global terrorists use Islam as their recruiting, one of their recruiting methods. Those kids were caught up. They reached out to religion because the left told them they were worthless, that their lives, they were victims. They were men that made them evil and bad in a country that's evil and bad. They have no choice, no way out of that. Nothing can help them. The kid said, let me reach out to religion. Maybe God will help me. And that's when the radical, fanatical Islamists found those kids and said, hey, you're already in a bad situation. You know what? Blow up some people. God will love you and give you 72 virgins. They're 18.
Michael, that's a big line to cross, man. One thing is like punching somebody in the face, but you know, I people say, oh, you know, Michael, MatthewJ, they really 18 or 19. Hey, man, when I was 18 or 19, I wasn't thinking about shit like that. This is evil, evil stuff, man.
You know, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18. So, and we see around the world, there are kids in the Sudan right now. There are 14-year-olds that are fighting.
Right.
So circumstances can bring you to that point where you need to be aggressive. You have to be very aggressive to protect your life and protect your loved ones. But the joy of being in the United States, you don't have that problem. There isn't. We don't. Our quality of life, our technology, our status as a superpower, all at the same time, and the freedom to do virtually anything you want, you know, that's unparalleled in the world. We have this is the best moment in the history of the world to be alive if you're an American citizen in America. There is nothing, there has never been a better time to have your life and to be able to express yourself and to live the life you want. Nowhere else in the world, no other time in the history of humanity. And yet, we see the progressive socialist ideology is saying, no, we have to destroy that. Because if you have such freedom and such opportunity with so many resources, well, you'll never become a communist. You'll never.
Michael, do you see copycats coming down the road here?
Absolutely. You mentioned something earlier. We don't know how many terrorist sleeper cells may be in America. I can give you an estimate. A lot of people don't like to look at this. They don't like to think about this number. There were under the 4 years of Joe Biden, because of the open border policy, over 400 known or suspected terrorists were caught in America. The 8 members of ISIS from Tajikistan that were hiding out for a year in California. One example that people may remember. But there were over 400. And they were in America, some of them only for a day, some of them for over a year before they were deported. Now, the normal rule is when we're looking at illegal immigration, whatever we catch, whatever we know of, well, that's about half as many as actually did enter the United States. So let's go with that as our number. That's 400 that we know came into America, which was a 3,000% increase versus previous to that. That means that there's another 400. That works out to about 8 people, 8 terrorists in each and every state across America. And they've been here for years. In some cases, 4 years, 5 years, at least a year or two that have been here indoctrinating the youth. Is it possible that in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, one of the denser cities with a huge population, could one of those sleeper cell influencers that came in under the Biden-Harris administration, could they have nudged these kids to find out more about the radical Islamist terrorist organizations, ISIS in particular, and then convince them that they should go to Turkey and Syria, get trained, and come back? Is that what happened? It could be. And the reason why we won't even have this discussion in America, and we should, whether you think I have merit or not, we should have this conversation. We won't, because the mainstream media knows that if we do, that means we have to talk about open borders, how they failed, how the Biden-Harris administration failed, and we're doing it in a midterm election year, which means that some people will say Democrats were responsible, and they were, and therefore, why should I vote for another Democrat?
Michael, I don't know if you're going here. You seem to be talking about accountability for Democrats. Well, if they knew this, primarily, and you know, a first day intelligence professional would know this, or an FBI agent on the first day, if they knew this, then why aren't we moving on something? Because they set us up. They kept the border open. They didn't vet people. They just rolled right in. Well, to me, that's like a criminal intent of the administration that they installed Biden regime.
I would say so, but again, we see that these policies, these Democrats that approved of these open borders, and its consequences, and this is a direct consequence of that open border policy, they're protected because they want to maintain power. Remember, these colleges have been pushing this very same ideology out into the public. Their students, when they graduate Harvard, they graduate Columbia or Binghamton University, Stanford, whatever college, they're coming into the regular world with this ideology, and they are going into businesses, becoming managers and executives in companies, especially in media companies, that control how we hear about these stories, how we talk about these stories.
Right.
And so they're giving them cover. That's why we should have this conversation. We should say, do these these elected officials, these appointed members of government, sometimes people call it the deep state, but however you want to call it, shouldn't we hold them accountable? We have known and suspected terrorists in the hundreds potentially throughout our country.
Michael, let me ask you this. Would sanctuary cities be protecting these people because they don't divulge immigration status when people are arrested or stopped?
Absolutely. And we know, think about it, why did, again, going back to the Tajikistan terrorists, members of ISIS, why did they go from the southern border directly into California and we lost them for a year?
Yeah.
They were actively found out and they were being tracked down, and it took us a year to find them, to deport them. Why did that happen? Why did they go to California? Sanctuary state. Why did they go to New York and New York City? Sanctuary state. Philadelphia, sanctuary city, kind of a sanctuary state. New Jersey. You notice the bluer that you are, you're bluer than your city, the bluer the government, then the more terrorists and illegal aliens tend to go there because they will be protected.
Michael, isn't this
our laws?
I think you may have said this. Should this be something that we should be? We're approaching the midterms of what the Democratic Party has done us. And Michael, heaven forbid, I know a lot of stuff. You're on the internet like I am, and you're hearing about false flag, what's currently going on in the Middle East. And then you hear like what you just said about 400 known, but we probably know there's a lot more than that. Okay. The Democrats, I mean, it's like obviously we know the legacy media is not going to bring it up, but we should be, as a party, we should really be illuminating this, that they really put us in danger. And not to mention, I know I'm going to go off on a tangent here with Michael, and I want to talk about this a little later, to a lesser extent, to the partial government shutdown where TSA is not getting funded. And now, I'll be flying next week. And they're shutting down, entrance gates because obviously people aren't getting paid anymore and things like that. Well, in a sense, that's just jeopardizing our security. Maybe some of these people that are now there are overworked. The Democrats are also, it looks like they're getting a free ride on that as well. They're compromising our airport security as well.
Well, the TSA, the problem with the government shutdown, because Democrats did learn a lesson from the last one, the Schumer shutdown, which completely failed, and Democrats suffered politically, and they were embarrassed. And so they did a different style. They planned to do this anyway, but they changed the way they did it. Instead of shutting down the entire government, they shut down a part of it. Mm-hmm. They wanted to defund ICE, defund law enforcement. That people, the American people, 77 million of us, said, we want mass deportations. The law says there should be mass deportation. The Constitution says there should be mass deportations. And the public said, do it. Democrats are fighting against it. Only the Democrats were fighting against this. And they said, okay, we'll defund ICE, even though ICE already has the money. So they were virtue signaling. And they counted on the fact people didn't know, if we just defund that one department, well, then we're going to put pressure on everything else, and they're going to try and blame it on the Republicans when only, and Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, she recently was on several news programs trying to say, well, this is because of Republicans that the government shut down, why TSA and DHS are not funded. That's a lie. That's a lie. Look at the vote count. And this is the problem with the news media. What they should have said directly is, well, actually, Jake Tapper did bring this up when he was told this by Adam Schiff. He said, yeah, but if the vote count is Democrats are voting against funding the government, not Republicans. Republicans.
Michael, there was a 2-week extension floated out today. The Republicans said at least give them pay for the next 2 weeks, and the Democrats shot that down too. I don't know if you saw that. I saw that just before we came on air.
Yeah, I didn't see that. But
yeah, they were trying to. The Republicans were trying to do that. Michael, I look at this as a double whammy. About an hour or two ago, I was seeing that airline prices are going to start going up because of what's going on in the Middle East. So now, if you're the traveler, you get the double whammy. You get the nonsense that's happening and the craziness just trying to check in and go through security. And now you'll be going to be paying higher, maybe even much higher, depending on the length of this engagement over in the Middle East. So it's and I was going to ask you this question, Michael, how do the Democrats think this is a winning way for them to hold out with this partial government showdown? How do you possibly think that they could get a win out of this? It's bizarre.
Because one, the majority of Americans are not well informed. They go by headlines and comments in social media, which are often completely false. Someone just puts up a meme and they go, well, that must be true. It's got 1 million views. It must be the truth. That's an authority bias. They're counting on that. They're counting on the mainstream news media not following up and asking questions and getting answers. They're counting on that. And they're looking at their base, and their base goes, well, this is a virtue signal. And when you see people who are virtue signaling, it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. It doesn't matter if it's effective or not. It is the virtue signal itself that they celebrate, regardless of its consequences or its impact.
Exactly.
You virtue signal. You're good. You're doing great. And you get lauded by that side. So they're pressing that because what they're counting on is depressing, emphasizing the apathy of the vast 60% of America are independent, have no party affiliation.
Michael, this is primarily because they want the ICE restrictions put in place?
Yeah. Well, that's what they're saying now. I'm sure they'll tack more onto it. But supposedly, this is all about ICE. This is about...
It is crazy. Yeah. Michael, let me just ask you a question. I know this is going to be a side question to this whole airport thing but I was talking with my wife when we were watching the headlines today. Why aren't the airlines who were making record profits prior to this, why aren't they like back in the day? Why isn't it incumbent upon them to do their own screening? Why did the government entity, I know after 9/11, stuff like that, but isn't it time to give it back to them? Why is the taxpayer doing this?
Hard question, because I agree with you. It should be the airports and or the airlines themselves should be taking care of this. It can be done by private business and probably more effectively. And
yes,
in fact, absolutely more effectively. The reason why it was done by government is it implies more security, that the government's doing it so it's more impartial. It is more over all-encompassing. It is something that's going to protect you more. It was meant to make people feel safe. Because straight out of 9/11, that was the reason for it. The shoe bomber, as an example,
I remember that
was one of the big motivations for getting this to happen, which was an overreaction. And the reason why it still exists is the fact that we've seen virtually nothing ever be removed. Once government funds something, once government creates something, it's there forever. The U.S. aid, 83% of it was all corrupt. U.S. aid is still getting funding. The Congress has never stopped the funding. We're sending money to a shell that has no employees, has no workers, has no money. The money's not moving, and it's still going into an account for U.S. aid. This is stupid. This is money we're spending in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, big money.
That money's still going there. The government is still printing the check and putting it into the bank for U.S. aid. It doesn't exist, but it was never closed. It was never removed. So the next time the Democrat gets in, they'll just turn the switch on and say, okay, USAID is back. We've got a bunch of money. Let's just go and start buying governments and pushing California politics on the rest of the world. That's what they'll do. So it's kind of disappointing.
Michael, listen, I want to piggyback off that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is a pretty big topic, USAID, and come back to this country. And the kid that exposed the fraud in Minneapolis and Minnesota,
Nick
was
Sorter
out in California. Yes, it was out in California, and he went to like an apartment building, and it was the front for like 60 companies for senior care or some other things. He saw a lot of expensive vehicles out there. So, Michael, what is the extent of the fraud, not just in Minnesota, but in California? Would we see that reflected in every Democrat-run jurisdiction?
Absolutely. And possibly some red states as well, because, and the key here is, when every criminal faction, every organization, and pretty much any individual criminal that works in that financial arena, when they saw what was happening in Minnesota, and they saw that you can go from $1 million with a legitimate purpose to $300 million when it's a complete scam, you could do that in 5 years. They said, oh, wait a minute, we can do that. We can copy that model, that purpose, that can be duplicated in every single state, and especially the blue states, because it's easier. The programs already exist, and all you have to do is abuse the program. All you have to do is put out the numbers and say, I'm helping black and brown people. You can't stop me, otherwise I'll claim racism. And that's all it takes. We saw that with Minnesota. You can't stop us. Oh, that's racist. And the Dems fold. And you are okayed and allowed, approved to continue to defraud. So, yeah, I've said this since the very beginning of when we first heard about this fraud in Minnesota, that it is being duplicated. We know it seems to exist right now on different levels and in different forms, like the hospice in California. You'll see it in New York State. We have seen it in Ohio. We've seen it in Maine. You're going to see it in New Jersey, Washington State. You're going to see
it
Philly. All of the bluer than blue. They're all doing it because the criminals saw it works, and they have the ultimate benefit of saying it's helping them.
Michael, what's your confidence level that Pam Bondi will follow through with prosecutions? Because we sure as hell know that Ellison in Minnesota, the attorney general there, or in New York, or anywhere out here in Pennsylvania, that they're going to drag their feet at best. Are you confident Pam Bondi can score a victory here?
Well, we already are, and then we're not. Let me clarify that. So, as using Minnesota as the key, we know that some 95 individuals have been indicted and arrested and are in the process of being in trial and going to jail in some cases. And we've seen about, I believe the last number was about 56 or 60 of that 95 have been convicted of crimes. So we are prosecuting, and we are winning in case after case after case. It's not a question of we got the wrong people or this wasn't real. It is. And so we've been succeeding. But you're right that the process is being slow walked by Minnesota, by Keith Ellison, and by Tim Walz, the governor as well. They are putting up the bureaucratic blockade that is Democrat politics overwhelmingly, especially in bluer than blue states. And so that is slowing it down. Now, I would love for Bondi to go and arrest Keith Ellison. That Ellison would be charged with crimes of obstruction and possibly more. And I believe he should be removed from office. He's broken his oath and his duties as the attorney general and as a lawyer.
We have to get the puppet masters, Michael.
Yeah, and I want them to, but I don't think Bondi's going to. I don't think she's the right person to do it.
Who is?
That's a good question. Someone who's not on our radar right now. Bondi is. She's playing the game. She's playing a political game as well as a legal one, and I think that's wrong. The answer should be just do the job. Don't
There
worry
you
about
go.
the politics. Screw the politics. In fact, she should be blunt about this and say, this is the law. This is how the writing of the law, this is the meaning of the law, and I am going to execute that law because that's what her job is. That means Ellison gets pulled right now, instantly. And so does Tim Walz and everyone else. And it doesn't matter about the politics. And let the political fallout of that, which would involve House and Senate and all the rest of the races, let that go wherever it may. That's not her job. That's not her concern. Let the Trump administration, the rest of the administration deal with that. Let the GOP and the Democrats figure that out. She should just do her job. And until we have someone who's there who is going, this is the law. This is how it was written. This is what its intention is. I am going to enforce that. Period. Full stop. Done. I don't care about whether or not it's politically good or bad for my party, someone else's party. Doesn't matter. This is the law. This is what it means.
Michael, do you think these were federal crimes or were they state crimes? And Ellison had said on the Hill a few weeks ago, "Oh, do you know how many investigations I've had into this? Why aren't you people looking at that?" Are these federal crimes for the most part, as far the fraud that was going on in Minnesota, the welfare scams and whatnot? That's federal fraud, or is that state activity?
Well, technically, see, I don't want people to think I'm waffling. There are aspects to this. So I'm trying to be as complete as I can. It is correct to say that these are state crimes because they are happening within the state of Minnesota and Ohio, Maine, California. It's happening within the state, affecting people in that state. But it's also federal in that the money, the funding is coming from the federal government.
Yes.
Funneled through the state. So technically it is a state issue, but because the money comes from the federal government, it is federal at that point. So that limits some of the charges that can be placed because for Bondi, as an example, she can only charge certain things because it is state centric, but it is federal.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
So that's the answer to that. And a lot of people don't realize that it's not as simple as it's all federal. So then federal government comes in. It's not.
Michael, should Doge have caught some of this stuff?
Say again?
Should Doge have uncovered some of this fraud?
Yes. And I think they might have. Again, Minnesota, what's happening in Minnesota, Maine, Ohio, California, we've already known about this. Local news media have been talking about these things for years. It's not that it's not known. It's not been acted on. That's the difference.
Oh, no, yeah, I hear you.
But could Doge have been used to highlight this for the public and bring it to a national level? Yes. If it had continued, I think it would have. Technically, Doge should have still been in operation until June this year. So, but that was political. Doge was basically shut down because of politics, and that, I think, was a mistake.
But Doge wanted to go after like DOD budgets and things like that, and they shut it down.
Yeah, it was not politically friendly to do that, but that was their job. Go across the entire government, find the waste, shut down that waste. And if that includes the Department of War, if it includes any department that even Democrats or Republicans like, doesn't matter. Shut it down. All of it. And if it's politically not advantageous, do it anyway. Now, there's a difference there. And I think this needs to be brought up. I think most of the policies that Donald Trump is directly advocating for and acting on, almost all of his actions directly, are for long-term benefit of America, 5, 10, 20 years out. Almost all of his actions are based on, or I'm understanding them as, he's looking at the net consequence in 5, 10, and 20 years to continue the superpower status of America, the opportunities of America, the self-sufficiency of America in that time frame. And the rest of our government has been built into this idea of next week politics. What's going to happen next week, the next election? We saw this a lot with the Biden-Harris administration. Everything that Biden-Harris were doing was about getting Democrats to win the next election. Why did we not know that there was an additional 1.5 million unemployed people in America in the unemployment rolls, in the unemployment rate? Why didn't we know that under Biden? Because it helped Democrats get through the next election. That's why they didn't tell us those numbers from 2023 and 2024. They hid this from us. They lied because it would be advantageous. Why did they lie to us about Biden being a part-time zombie president? Why didn't we see anyone talking about the number of known and suspected terrorists in America? This is a number that comes from the Border Patrol, by the way. People don't believe me? Go look it up. The data is there. We have actual physical numbers. I'm not making it up. I just know where to look in the government reporting to find a number. And by the way, so did the New York Times, ABC, all of the major news media. They have people who are reading these numbers every week, and they're getting paid 6, 7 figures to know this data, and they're not telling you. I make, like 4 or 5 figures. I mean, I'm poor, and I found it. I'm one man. So they know, they just don't want to tell because it is based on political advantage. And we need, Donald Trump has been doing, a lot of what he's doing is, regardless of the political advantage, it's good for America. So he's doing it. And that should be something that
listen,
administration.
Michael, we'll get into this later, but yes, I'd like to keep highlighting the good things that President Trump has done for the country. I mean, I agree with everything, but as far as our country domestically, he's done great things. Now, Michael, I did want to ask you something about New York City that I forgot to ask you.
Sure.
But I find it ironic. The New York City mayor has appointed a new LGBTQ head. I think she used to be with the Attorney General's office in New York. And as the new director, I don't know how much that person's getting paid, but isn't it something contradictory that he's a Muslim? And I think you mentioned this earlier. He's a Muslim, but he's making sure that the community there, the LGBT, is getting all kinds of, directors and whatnot. Is it kind of contradictory that he's this diehard Muslim, but on the other side, he's shady?
Well, it depends on what do you think is his purpose. If the purpose, as stated by the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as the purpose as stated by the Ayatollah, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, if we're looking at what terrorists and also the DSA and the progressive movement think, they want to destroy America. They want to remove, and when I say destroy America, they want to destroy the Constitution,
right?
The amendments. They want to supplant them and replace them with a new set of laws that they approve of that come from government. All power comes from the government to you and can be taken away. That's what their movements, and you don't have to believe me, look it up. They all say that. And that falls right in line with the terrorist movements, which say destroy America. Well, they coincide and they are aligned in that same ideology. Destroy America as it exists and rebuild it. So Mandami he's in the center of that. He is a self-acclaimed socialist communist. He wants to have the DSA movement. He's part of that. He says, yeah, we want to get rid of the Constitution, the amendments, and replace them with more government. He said it himself after he got elected, that there is nothing that government can't do. I think the exact quote is, there's no problem too big or too small for government to handle. He wants government in everything to micromanage your life. But that also aligns directly with what we see from terrorist organizations and from the Ayatollah. Destroy America, destroy the Constitution, destroy the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, destroy the freedom that allows women to work and to read and to be out and work, the same freedom that allows people to choose and to state openly that they're gay or lesbian, they're trans, they're whatever of the infinite sexualities that are being proclaimed right now, that you get to make your choice. They want to remove that. Well, that's exactly what Mondami's doing. The best of both worlds come together when he supports that, because the end goal, I would say, is ultimately to destroy America. As
Michael, does Mamdani have the power locally in the city to start doing things? I think what California's done in a couple of places over in Europe. Say, for example, if you misgender somebody in the city, to be fined or arrested for 90 days. Do you see this where this is going as far? I mean, he can do what he wants, but he's embracing all communities, not necessarily looking at the big picture. He's embracing LGBTQ, the Muslim community. Do you see this thing getting draconian at some point?
It is already draconian, but it's draconian on things that people aren't really paying attention to yet. And that's how you make the change. You slowly, but you drip feed it. You do little things, and when people get used to that, then you go into the next thing.
Yes.
And we are seeing this is exactly what happened in Europe, the EU, and it's also what's happening at this very second in England, except the British people have caught on and said, no, stop, full stop. Right. And that's mostly because they got to see the Trump administration, MAGA, America First, rise up and say, no, stop. And they saw that and said, wait a minute, that's happening here. We were here first. We were leading on some of these issues. Maybe we should pause. Maybe we should hold back. And so that's why you're seeing the British now in turmoil, because they're basically doing what we have been doing. They're about 5 years behind us. Now, do I think Mondami doesn't have the power to do it, but he has the power to put people in place so that they can keep pushing towards the left, keep pushing. A lot of people like to say the Overton window, to move America. When I was in my 20s, America, and pretty much almost always, America has been a center-right nation. Most issues, politics, whatever it may be, most Americans were centrist, if not leaning right. And now we've seen in the last roughly 15 years, everything is moving left. People who in the 1980s who were considered moderate Democrats are now considered hardcore Republicans. An example would be Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for most of his life, was considered a Democrat.
Yeah.
And it's only until 2016 that suddenly he went from being a roughly what they used to call blue dog Democrat, a fiscally conservative Democrat, which would be probably the most accurate way of describing him in the past. And in 2016, he suddenly went from being that Democrat centrist moderate, center left leaning, and suddenly became far right. Overnight, he instantly transformed one to the
Michael,
other.
It's an interesting thing. A lot of people don't know that. I know you know it because you're in New York City, but it doesn't. Let me just double back on that real quick, Michael. As Donald Trump was going through, the building empire and whatnot in the 80s and 90s, and you saw him on TV and Oprah and all that, wasn't still at the core, Donald Trump was still, let's say, a supporter of law and order. Would you say that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, in the 70s, 80s, even in the 60s, the majority of Democrats in all of America agreed with law and order.
Yes.
Now, again, when there were crimes, when there was extremes, when there was abuse, all of America agreed on saying, no, that has to be punished at the highest levels possible. And in fact, it wasn't until the radicals of the 1960s, who were progressive socialists, we're talking about Bill Clinton, Bill Ayers, that whole generation, Barack Obama, coming from our leftist colleges, they came into power, and then they started pushing everything further left. And it kept moving left. They got the energy, they got positions. You had Bill Clinton in, you had Barack Obama getting in. Obama was trained and was under the wing of Bill Ayers, the underground,
weather?
Underground, oh God, I forget the name of the
underground weather movement. What was it called?
Movement, yeah, the Weatherman movement, which was bombing U.S. federal facilities. Okay, so that's terrorist. That's a domestic terrorist. And that was the introduction to Democrat politics. That's how Obama got in. So are we surprised that Obama is a socialist leftist pushing everything to the left?
Yes.
And that's the problem that we've seen. Everything has been shifting to the left over and over. And we're being told that's normal. Everything is, they're normalizing it the second they do it. It's normal for there to be infinite numbers of sexes and identities. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's abnormal. We came up with that crap in 5 years.
It's absolutely evil. Michael, listen, I want to move on to one more domestic issue before we start talking about what's happening overseas.
Absolutely.
I just want to ask you a quick question. I know it's been a couple months. How's Larry Sharpe? How's the campaign going for governor of New York?
For those who don't know, and I like to disclose this, Larry Sharpe has been a friend of mine for 10 years now. He's a Marine like I am. I've known him. I debate with him on a regular basis. He's a libertarian. I'm a conservative Republican, if you haven't noticed. So sometimes I agree with my good friend Larry, and sometimes I vehemently disagree with him, and I've done that publicly as well as privately.
Yeah.
So I just want to get that out. I do support him for governor of New York, even as a Republican. I don't know if you know this, he joined the Republican Party. He's a libertarian.
I saw that.
Yeah, he's a libertarian at heart. But politics is politics. He needs to better reach the people, because as a third party in New York State, you don't exist. The news media won't talk about you. They try and cut the funding. It's to get.
Is he still going to get that $500,000 for the
matching funds?
Yes,
it's still available. It's still available. Being your party affiliation doesn't matter. It's about we're getting 5,000 people in New York State to donate. No more than $250. As soon as he hits the $500,000, then he gets 6-to-1 matching. So the moment that 5,000 New York residents give him $250 or less, and he gets $500,000, that turns instantly overnight into $3 million, which makes it a winnable.
He's also named his lieutenant governor pick, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Who's that?
Carpinelli, Sheriff Mike.
And what's his background, Michael?
He's a solid Republican. He is in fact, the left would tell you that he's an extreme right winger, MAGA kind of guy. And this is the thing. Even though Larry Sharpe may be a libertarian, he's not that far away from what you and I would agree with on most issues. There are some more social issues that we have some disagreements on. Okay, but we can work with that. Larry is willing to talk with people about it. Here's the thing. Right. What we are seeing in this race is they don't want any voice. The GOP in New York is horrible. They are willing to lose. Bruce Blakeman, a guy that almost no one knows, even in New York politics, almost no one knows about this guy. He has no policies. If we go to his website right this second,
right,
and you bring it up, you will not find one policy position. I have long said, if a candidate doesn't have a policy, they're not serious. You're there for some other reason, to raise up money, get your high profile. You're not seriously trying to run. I've said this many times, and I've told many people who are running. I've helped a lot of candidates run for the first time. First thing I tell them is, what are you running for? What do you stand for? Here's my question about Blakeman. What's he stand for? We don't know. He says, I'm not Kathy Hochul bad. Fantastic, I agree. What are you going to do? He has no idea. Larry has policy. So I've been trying to help as best I can to help Larry get in.
That's fine. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. Michael, would I be wrong when he was on the program, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, he was kind of a proponent for giving local authorities more power to do things. If they wanted to do something in their community, so be it. Would that be a correct thing I read from that interview?
Local. It's called localism.
Right.
Focusing the money and the power of your local community. It's stepping away from the Mondami figure of, okay, government's going to micromanage all of your life. It's the exact opposite. It's your local community. So your mayor going from your local community. So your local mayor, your local school board has the biggest impact, as they should. They're most directly connected to you. And then going up the chain. And that's when the government is only doing things that local government can't do. So as an example, nuclear power. If there's a city in New York, and there's a few places that have former coal plants, they can convert those to nuclear plants pretty easily. It connects to the grid already. Most of the structure is there. So if your community says, yeah, let's put a nuclear plant there, a thorium generation 4 nuclear power plant, which is very, very safe.
Right.
Then you can. Why? It's your community. You guys are the ones who are going to be dealing with that every day, first and foremost. It's your community that's going to be affected instantly, good and bad. So you should have the biggest voice in whether or not that's going to exist, not someone in the governor's seat who has nothing to do with that. By the way, government will benefit if there's a nuclear power plant built in New York, thorium 4. It creates energy that lowers the cost for every community.
Michael, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but in terms of social issues, and this is just observation, so I'm going to get your feedback on it. Say, for example, if a town or a small city in New York wanted to say, okay, we want to legalize prostitution, we want to legalize pot, we want to legalize hallucinogenics, we want to do a couple things. Now, with the libertarians, they would see, hey, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
To an extent, yes, they do, and I disagree with that. And I do disagree with that. I don't believe in legalizing prostitution. I don't want to legalize drugs. That's my personal belief. Okay. I know on those two issues in particular, Larry's on the opposite side, as are many libertarians, but so's the left. And they're happening anyway.
But some libertarians are split on that also. And as far as I know, another big question as far as illegal immigration, I don't know where Larry stands on that. Some libertarians are, hey, if you want to move around, you can move around where you want to. And some are saying, no, it is destroying the country and our resources.
They have a different
Larry in the middle of that, or what?
Slightly different. He does believe in one of the first things he believes in, one of the biggest things, overriding it all. Does it cause harm to someone else? If it causes harm, then he does want people to be punished for that. I don't want people to think that he's like, just go do anything. It's all anarchy. No, he's not into that. But his laws are built around the idea of at the moment of harm, it then becomes a crime and then is punished. In terms of illegal immigration, it's not, he wants orderly immigration, more open than we have now, but also more organized. Private companies basically reopening Ellis Island. Those companies are responsible for doing research, background research on the individuals that they then bring into America. They're also responsible for making sure that these new immigrants are not just fully vetted, but also that they get a job. And so if they turn out to be a terrorist, or they just turn out to be a burden on the economy, that business is then liable for that individual, and they can be punished for that. They can be sued.
I got you. Now,
and so forth.
The next question is, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. If you had a gauge where Larry's campaign's at now, is he made more inroads? I think the last time I forget what the percentage you said. Is he moving forward? Is it pretty much stayed the same since the last time I spoke to you? Or is Larry campaigning with his lieutenant governor to be? Are they campaigning together across the state, or how are they approaching the rest of the campaign?
I think the last time that we had spoken was before Larry joined the Republican Party, and they're out getting petitions now. Got to get 15,000. By the way, if you're third party in New York, you have to get 45,000. So that gives you an idea of why would you want to be a Republican in the major parties. Democrats and Republicans get 15,000 signatures. Any other party has to get 45. That's one of the big differences there. He's in the process of doing that. People should consider, if they want to, check out his site, make up your own mind. But Larry, last time we talked, prior to joining the Republican Party, was at 8%. 8% in polling were directly saying, yes, they would look for Larry as a third party outside the system. The most recent poll that I have been able to see, and this is, again, still before Larry became a Republican or joined the Republican ticket, he was at 21%. So he has improved. His name is getting out there. He is out right now, going out every weekend, usually 3 days out of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, traveling. And here's the thing. He's been going, I've known him for 10 years. 8 of those years, he goes every year to every county. 62.
How many counties in New York, Michael?
62.
That's a lot of counties, man.
And every year for 8 years in a row, he has gone to every single county, whether he's running for an office or not. He has gone every year talking to the public. And he's doing it. This is now his.
And Michael, I may have asked you this before, or last time we talked about Larry. As far as when it gets down to debates, will there be debates or no debates, or how will that work out?
That's what the petitions are about. If he gets, if he gets the 15,000 signatures, which we hope he does, then Bruce Blakeman, who is the GOP approved guy, not the public approved, that's the leadership of the GOP, he was put in place. Then there will be a primary. They'll both have to over 15,000. They'll have to have a primary and say, and debate and let Republicans across the state decide who's the best to represent us. I think that's a positive for the GOP. It means we get the strongest person, whomever that may be. And therefore, Larry will be in the debate with Hochul because of that. If he does not get into the primary, which I believe if he gets in the primary, he wins, he will blow Blakeman out of the water and get the debate with Hochul. If not, then he's running as a libertarian, a third party, independent. He needs 45,000 signatures. That'll put him on the ballot. And as long as he has over 10% of the public approval in 3, I believe it's, they changed the rules on this, but I believe it's 3 major polls having shown a 10% or more approval or interest by the public, then he would be able to be on the debate stage.
Michael, you're talking about a lot of hoops to jump here, man.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is harder. I've run for Congress. I've run for county legislature. It's not just that it's governor, because I mean, running for Congress is federal as well. No. It's because Larry isn't a traditional,
at least in the Iranian conflict. But what I'd like to do, I got 15 pages on the latest breaking news the last hour or two with hits and stuff like that. But what I want to ask Michael Vass is something a little different than most commentators are asking about now. And it's kind of like on the periphery of it and the U.S. relationship with other countries. And let's say, for example, we see what's going on with the UK and Starmer, and President Trump was right saying this, that he's no Winston Churchill.
He's a coward.
Michael, the question I want to ask you, is the special relationship between the US and UK over?
No, but it is damaged. We've had different prime ministers of England and personalities here, presidents of the United States, and they don't like each other. That happens. I mean, they're people. You know, besides being the figureheads of our countries, they are people. They will disagree. They will dislike. But I'd like to believe that we have consistently seen professionalism when it comes to dealing with each other. At the moment, Starmer is exceptionally unprofessional. And I think that's because he's a coward. And when I say that, I'm quoting Kemi Badenoch and many members of the British government that have come right out and said that Keir Starmer is a coward. In fact, much of the British news media have come out and said that about him because he doesn't want to make a decision. I don't know that he personally is a coward, but in representing the country, he refuses to make a decision. He refuses to align him. So doing virtue signaling, leader of a government, does not work. And that puts in a lot of damage. I think it is correct for Trump to say that there are going to be consequences for this. There should be. And I think that, especially for England, it's something that's going to be rather devastating for them because they have always had such a special relationship. And I'm pretty sure I've seen that there seems to be back channel talks trying to get Prince Charles to intercede and use his position as the monarch to try and smooth over this as much as possible. But I think
That's a big
either
task.
they get rid of, I think Starmer has to go, and they have to have someone else who makes a definitive decision, not a virtue signal.
Well, Michael, if there's not a no confidence vote, I think he's in there till 2029. The
I think
Brits are
there'll be a
stuck
no
with it.
confidence vote. I think there's going to be a no confidence vote.
I mean, there should be. Now, I want to mention something. The Irish Prime Minister was at the White House with President Trump. President Trump was very gracious with the guy. Martin does not like Trump. I mean, I follow the Irish media very, very closely. He doesn't. I'm sure Trump knows all about it. And last week, Starmer and the Irish Prime Minister met in Cork, a city that I'm very familiar with, and in Ireland. They had their little summit, and reportedly they are very, very tight. Now, watching the body language of the Irish Prime Minister when President Trump was giving Starmer the business and just saying, "No, this guy's weak, and you won't send us any minesweepers or anything like that," you could clearly see the Irish Prime Minister was very put back. And I may add too, Michael, to you and the rest of the audience, when someone asked the Irish Prime Minister about the illegals or migrants coming in by the hundreds of thousands into Ireland, Martin, the Irish Prime Minister, tried to finesse and say, "Well, President Trump, we have so many mechanisms in place, not just in Ireland, but throughout Europe, to control all this migration." Total bullshit. I mean, just total bullshit.
Yeah.
This guy's ruining his country. We're trying to do the best. I don't want, the guy's over from Ireland. They're celebrating St. Patrick's Day. I don't want Trump, banging him over the head with stuff. And, President Trump, as he usually is, was very gracious with foreign leaders, even if he doesn't like them. But there's a way Trump uses, as you know, Michael, that he'll still be able to get his message across, even if he kind of makes it covered a little bit. But I'm glad that
relations. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be that way. Polite, but diplomatically a little bit of a sharp edge to it. Yeah.
Let me ask you again, keeping up with some of these questions, and we'll get into the meat of it. I was watching a press conference yesterday, President Trump, J.D. Vance, and a few others, and a reporter asked J.D. Vance, "Oh, well, you still on board with what's going on in Iran, stuff like that?" And J.D. Vance snapped back, "Yes, of course I am." Now, I don't want to be dragging old stuff into this, but I think over the last couple of years, I've seen some stuff where J.D. Vance said he wasn't enthusiastic about an operation, and specifically Iran, but obviously he's had to come around. The question I'm asking you, Michael, and I know we're 2 years out, is what's occurring now? Will that affect J.D. Vance's chances in 28? Would it be a positive thing or a negative thing, this thing in Iran, or is it contingent if we have full victory or not full victory?
Good question. I was asked that recently on my own show. And okay, one of the biggest factors in this, and it changes because of this, I think the critical number is 1,000. 1,000 U.S. service members being injured or dead, most likely dead. If we hit that 1,000 mark, I think that you will see a large outcry from the general public against this. Now, I know some people say, but with Iran, that's crap. That is crap. And you know how I can prove that? Look at just two things. One, go to Real Clear Policy in the entire country, if not the world, and they come up with their numbers. Donald Trump, his approval rating right now is equal to or better Biden, Clinton, and Obama. He's at the same level or better than almost all of them. And in comparison to when he was the 45th president, his approval rating is at the same or better, given on any given day, 1 or 2 points. He's at the same level or better than almost his entire term as 45th president. Bigger one. Here's the real one that no one looks at. Is the country going in the right or wrong direction? Looking at the aggregate of all polling, all the polls that have been done, right now, Donald Trump has more approval of America being in the right direction than about half of the entire time that President Obama was in office. right now in the middle of a war. So when they say, oh, but the country hates what Donald Trump's doing, no, they're not. Because we're seeing that of all of the most recent presidents, Donald Trump has equal or better approval ratings, and the country believes we're going in the right direction as much or more than under other presidents previous. So I do not believe the polling that's being used to try and poke holes in our agenda.
Now, Michael, my views, if you ever watch my show, my views are, pretty much polar opposite to yours, but I don't want to see us getting bloodied or anything like that. But when I look at things, I look at NATO, the NATO countries basically saying, no, you started the war. The German prime minister saying you started it. It's your problem. When you look at, and look at this from an impartial observer, Joe Kent leaving. Joe Kent was openly embraced by Donald Trump and others, and the Republicans really loved the guy. Wife, I think, was killed in action or something like that in Iraq. And all of a sudden now, and as you were speaking to me, I had something flashed in front of me on my screen saying there's going to be an FBI investigation into Joe Kent for allegedly leaking confidential information. Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. It's listen,
politics.
I'm America First guy. I know what you're saying about the polling. I'm also seeing pollings where the independents are like around 10 or 15% agreeing for this. I'm seeing polls where if you look at the whole country as a whole, you're looking at about 20 or 25% support for the war. We're in the initial phases of it. Certainly his numbers are going to be up, just like I remember decades ago, when Thatcher went into the Falklands. The numbers, any leader that is going into war, usually the country will initially be behind him. And like you said, you're using possibly the thousand man killed or injured thing. I think it'll collapse way before that. I want what's best for the country. And right now, when I'm watching clip after clip of President Trump for 18 months during his election campaign saying, I will absolutely not involve us in an overseas engagement, one, and number two, I watch very closely his staff, the White House. I watch spokesmen. I watch the DOD. I watch President Trump. I watch Hegseth, at least for the first week or two. And some say even now, it was very much mixed messaging as far as where they wanted to go, what they were trying to accomplish. Now, whether that's leveling off, I don't know. But some of the worst things, some of the really negative residual things here happening are like, for example, on the first day when you had 175 Iranian girls get killed, their parents show up, and it's a double tap. The parents end up getting killed. You've got 300 servicemen. You've got 17 dead Americans. What I'm saying to you is, and you said it much to him, but let's just get what I'm saying, that there'll be a threshold here at some point where it will turn. And I believe that will happen possibly quicker than what you're suggesting.
Okay. I don't think it will. And again, I go back to, this is why I pointed out the direction of the country and approval ratings, because I think they're better judges of the public's opinion of everything being put in place. And that's where I get my part of how I get my understanding of where that.
No, I know the polls are good. The polls you quoted were real clear, and there's a couple other ones that I do respect. What I'm trying to say to you, Michael, before I know I'll let you go and explain this. We have so many things to address in the United States. I'm a stand-up America First guy. I mean, look what's been going on the last couple of months with the ICE riots, things like that. We have a lot of things to do, and President Trump has done great things, securing the border, bringing manufacturing back to this country, investment, attacking DEI. He's done great things, as you well know. He retweeted me in his first term multiple times, and that's a great thing too. I want him to succeed. There are people here, and I know that people aren't acknowledging this, that there people have some reservations about this engagement and whether it will be several weeks or it will be several months. They're legit questions, and I know there's a lot of people in the MAGA movement certainly would slam you over the head if you're not completely 110% behind that. I think what makes us different from the Democrats or the left or whatever is that we can have constructive dialogue in debate. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing you're either with this 100% or you're not. And I think that's bad for any party when it gets like that.
Well, I agree with you, because we should have, and I'm more than willing to be, if I mix my messaging if I'm not clear in my position or my limitations. Because one of my limits has always been boots on the ground, which directly has a large impact on how I believe about how this operation will go. Boots on the ground changes a lot. But I believe overall that what we're looking at in this situation, there's a lot of media that's out there to try and warp people's perceptions. But by the way, when we're talking about the school, yeah, that school wasn't targeted. It's on a base, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps base, and it was separated by the other military buildings by a brick wall. Well, you drop a tomahawk, you're talking about a 250, 500 pound weapon exploding, and the concussion blew out the wall and blew down the school because they were hitting a legitimate target, a military target. And the reason why they put a school on there was to use those kids as a human shield, which not everyone knew about until after the fact. But that's a separate thing. That's some of the propaganda being put out there to change the way people feel about this. The biggest thing is this is a long-term subject, an issue. It's been 47 years that we've been dealing with not just Iran, but the consequence of Iran under the Ayatollah. Terror, global terror that has affected every nation in the world, including our own, and it has taken the lives of thousands of Americans, both here in America because of domestic terror, but also because of global terror. So in taking this action, we are removing and stabilizing, or at least minimizing, the amount of global terror in the world in a 5, 10, 20-year outlook, which I think is what Trump is looking at here. This makes the world more stable, more peaceful at the long run. It has a cost now. I do believe that we will see this end rather quickly. The indication so far has been that it will be rather quick. To say that our troops won't be injured is ridiculous. To say that they're not going to die, which is why I say it's about 1,000 is my threshold, because it is to be expected. We are in a conflict. There are drones being used. There will be people who will die. I do not want that, but I'm not afraid of mentioning it. That's why I served. I swore, knowing that I could die. And we have a voluntary military. If they joined for any reason besides putting your life on the line for our government, then you shouldn't have joined, because that's what it's about.
Michael, I remember you said, hey, and you said this about Venezuela to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You put boots on the ground in the country, you own it. Did you say that?
Yes, I did, and I stand by it. I say the same thing about Iran.
Okay. Now,
boots on the ground, I want to.
I know you're probably a student of history like I am. You do remember back in the 80s, the Iran and Iraq conflict, which went from 1980 to 1988, which went to essentially a stalemate, but hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides were killed. And the problem that the Iraqis ran into, of course, was the Iranian, the mountainous regions and all types of warfare, regular conventional, but guerrilla warfare and things like that. Iran is a very large country. It's got 91 million people here. Obviously, the United States and Israel, I don't know if you even want to call it a war. They've got air superiority 10 times over. Now, with respect to your mentioning about terrorism, of course, I mean, I don't like the mullahs. I want them out there as well, but I want it to happen organically. Of course, we could go down another line, and it's not a leftist line. It's a factual line that, the Israelis engage in terrorism in a big way. They have for many, many decades. The United States, through the CIA, paramilitary groups, have also committed terrorist acts. So, that's neither here nor there. They're both wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. But I think that this is much larger. I think, I don't know if the word's hubris, that President Trump thought something like the Venezuela operation, as quick as it was a snatch and grab of Maduro, somehow he's been, I don't want to use the word brainwashed, but the people around him, the Israel First crowd, has told him, you know what, this is winnable, we'll degrade them, whatever. And then you have reports of the Israelis have their own agenda. We have our own agenda. The Israelis are striking the domestic oil supply lines like they've done in the last 2 days. They did it this afternoon. And the Trump administration said, no, don't do that. Now you're turning the Iranian people against us. What I'm saying to you is this is a total shit show. And the sooner that it gets over, the better.
I disagree with your conclusion. The facts I do not dispute. I disagree with the conclusion. Now, one, This has nothing, what the United States is doing has nothing to do with Israel. The fact that our interests align is that our interests align.
Michael, you can't believe that.
I
Man.
absolutely
Seriously,
believe that.
You can't
Because
believe
Israel's not, they're a separate entity. The United States, it is a fact that we are, according to the Ayatollah, according to the mullahs and their ideology and their terrorism, we are the great devil. We are the primary problem. They have always been targeting us.
I'm not disputing that. The North Korean leader said that he's got nuclear weapons. Michael, you do remember 9 short months ago in June.
Wait a minute. Let me answer you, because North Korea is completely, entirely different.
Well, I know, but I'm just making the thing. If you're going to start going after all the bad guys, there's going to be a long list.
Well, we're not going after all the bad guys. We're going after the bad guys who have actively been attacking us for 47 years. And we have the ability to end, or at least minimize, global terror, because Iran is the primary supporter of global terror in the world, putting in over $100 million a year into Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, to say the least. And so we know that. So we are having a definitive impact in stabilizing the world and bringing more peace in the world with our action. What I think that Trump was looking to see happen, and it was definitely telegraphed and said publicly to the world, we know that Iran was in the largest uprising that we have seen in the last almost 50 years in Iran, because of their inflation, and people were complaining and they were upset. And Iran, in their reaction, had a news media blackout, an internet blackout, and killed somewhere between, depending on your source, somewhere between 5,000 and 40,000 of their own people, imprisoning at least 30,000 of their own people for daring to complain about the fact that the cost of bread was too high. But that created a fertile ground, and we've seen this happen a couple times, but not as big, like the Green Movement under the Obama administration, where they were asking, again, America step in. Obama was absolutely not willing to do that, but we've seen this internal movement, an organic movement within Iran that has been searching. Now it came down to the largest one ever, with the biggest outcry of the Iranian people. We stepped in. We took the opportunity, because there's also aspects of why we're doing this, because it has to affect China as well. A little bit longer story, but yes, that's a factor in this. Well, we took the opportunity to take out the leadership, because we know we can get in. We know that their capabilities aren't good enough to inflict the same kind of damage as they did against Iraq. Yes, in the Middle East, Iran is a very, very big power, and they terrify the rest of the Middle East. Given against the United States, not the same thing. Still,
Michael, who's the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
No, what?
Who's the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
Which country in the Middle East has the largest army that's actually fought with Iran? Saudi Arabia.
Who has expanded their borders the most in the last 10, 20, 30 years?
Who's been attacked the most in the last 10, 20, 30 years?
I know, but you know what? We shouldn't be. That's
not
our problem.
I don't care about Iran. Excuse me. I don't care about Israel. They're not my focus. They have their own agenda. And if they want to expand their borders, let them. I don't care. That's their country and their agenda, which happens to align with ours. But by the way, so does the EU, so does Europe, so does Africa, especially Eastern Africa. The Strait of Hormuz being blocked is also stopping food from getting through to get to Africa and to Southeast Asia. There are many countries that their interests are aligned just as much as ours. Whether they want to admit it and be the bad guy, that's a different question. Now, I think that Trump thought that the Iranian people, based on where they were at this point after all these years, finally were fed up enough that if given the opportunity, because they don't have the right to defend themselves like we do here in America, but given an opportunity where a lot of the ground, the playing field, the battlefield has been evened massively. They've been given an opportunity to rise up and take control of their government. While their government is weak and disorganized, something they've never had before, they can then rise up. And I think Trump was counting on them doing exactly that, rising up.
Yeah, he thought it would be a weekend operation.
Not a weekend. I think it was going to.
No, I understand. I know. I got you, Mike. Listen, I know we could go on and on, but I have to wrap it up about this. The next time we're going to be on, obviously, I hope the war is over next time we're on.
I would hope so.
It may not be, but
we'll be
I'm
talking
sure
before it's over.
regardless if we disagree on the situation here in the Middle East, I'm sure we probably both agree that peace would be the best objective here. I'd like to think, I'm pretty sure that's probably Trump's objective. He's just going about it in a different way. Michael, where can we find you on social media?
Well, everyone can check out No Soundbites Allowed. I should be in every search engine in the world, but most directly you can go to YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and you'll be able to find me. Like every Sunday, I do now I'm in my 9th year of doing a Sunday program at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I spend about 2.5 to 5 to 7 hours.
Yeah, marathons.
To me, they're not. Matter of fact,
I know they're good, Michael. I checked in throughout the afternoon. I could go food shopping. I could take a drive down the shore, come back, and Michael Vass is still on. But that's a great thing. You got the gift of the gab.
You know my birthday. On my birthday,
April 5th, is it, Michael?
6th.
6th?
April
okay.
6th. I always do a marathon, and that's 12 hours of me just going through everything and anything. And I'll do that again this year, raising money again for the Jericho Project.
No, that's cool. And if I could do anything with that, I mean, we're certainly going to push that. That's a great project. Well, Michael, thanks for joining us here at the Matthew J. Show. It's always great when you come on here and we can discuss a lot of issues in a constructive manner, particularly New York City and New York. I mean, that stuff's national news almost every day.
Yeah,
what's occurring there. So I'm glad that you can give my audience a really an inside baseball perspective on what's happening in your city and New York State, because a lot of those issues they're also kind of national issues. So it's good for the Matthew J. Show audience to get all your level of expertise out there, and I do appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate being here and having a chance to talk with all of your audience, whether they agree or not.
I got you. All right, Michael, have a great night.
You too.
We'll be talking.
There's a dragon on the wire, breathing digital flames. No sound bites allowed is the name of his game. With a coffee in one hand and his puppy on his lap, cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Fluffy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.